Ladies and gentlemen, it is Valentine's Day, so what better way to fucking spend your time alone than watching a stand-up special that just got announced fucking yesterday, right? So let's talk about this shit right now. We're talking about Chris Rock, Tamborine. The 10-year hiatus for Chris Rock doing a stand-up special, and is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Let's talk about this shit right now, okay? So going into this thing, everybody kept on talking about the $40 million deal with Netflix. Is it going to be worth it? Is it not? People talking about Monique. Why didn't she get at least some sort of big payday when it comes to that shit? Or Wanda Sykes was talking about it. Honestly, I don't really give a shit about anybody getting paid more than me because honestly, the money doesn't really affect me. The only thing I actually care for is if anybody's actually worth $40 million. Now, going to this special is Chris Rock obviously has had a bit of a hiatus. So let's talk about this shit right now. Is it worth the $40 million? Who knows? But I will say this. I think if you're going to pay somebody that much money, you should probably wait to see the end result and then amp up the money, rather than just giving to them up front, because let's be real here. I know Chris Rock needed to take the money and run after the divorce, but hey, it is what it is. Now, going into this thing, is it good? Is it bad? After watching it, the answer is simply put, it's actually pretty decent. It's actually a solid return to form for Chris Rock. Now, here's the thing about this. I think this is actually a pretty solid stand-up special, and stand-up specials, simply put, they live and die on a crowd, just to begin with. Now, at the very beginning, we kind of kicked this shit off, and, you know, starts with Chris Rock with like this mini kind of like montage of people kind of like, you know, talking, whatever, and then we get right into the shit, and that's a little bit of a problem. Now, maybe it's just me, but I kind of feel like this stand-up special just kind of dropped me into the shit. Usually, I feel like for stand-up specials, you just kind of get a little bit like a thesis statement, right? Something to kind of like sink your teeth into, and then bam, you know, the people can, you know, get the first joke, the first bit of material. I feel like for this, it just kind of felt like you got dropped in like a PUBG match. And then, you know, he just started kind of going. Now, some of the topics he talks about is religion, divorce, gun control, shootings, you know, police brutality, just to begin with, white kids, you know, we need more white kids dead, and being with Al Sharpton and stuff, you know. Some of these topics are actually pretty good, and I actually thought they were actually, you know, funny, nonetheless. Now, the crowd itself is actually pretty well. My biggest problem with the crowd, and maybe some people thought so, maybe not, was that they were actually pretty good. They were into it. They were not dead for the most part. My biggest problem with the crowd is simply put, I feel like there was a couple of jokes in here that just thought was not really that funny, and they were kind of, to me, fails a bit. And I felt like the crowd was just laughing hysterically, whether it would be because they actually thought it was funny, or because, you know, it was like, hey, it's Chris Rock, you know, or nostalgia, or whatever it may be. And I get it's comedy subjective. Anything can be funny to anybody, believe me. You know, especially when you look at some of the comedians these days that are making millions of dollars, you'd be like, that guy? That girl? What? You know, it doesn't really matter sometimes. But to me personally, I just thought some of the jokes was not that funny, and some of the people were just laughing constantly to the point where it almost kind of felt a little bit irritating. It almost felt like a laugh track in some of these shitty sitcoms these days, where they kind of just constantly keep on putting it out there, even with some of the dumbest shit, like somebody stumping their toe. But like, laugh track? That's great. And then it started to get a little bit annoying. Now, this comedy special to me is broken down into 3 separate parts, if I had to put it into it. It felt like the first 20 minutes is actually pretty good, where it kind of starts off, you know, pretty well. You know, he's sinking into it. He's been out of the game a bit, but he's not nervous. He never seemed like he was out of touch, per se. Then about, you know, for the first 20 minutes, I got a smile on my face. I'm kind of like laughing. I'm like, this is actually pretty, you know, it's pretty funny. You know, Chris Rock is back. Cool. Then the 20 minutes go by, and then in the middle 25 minutes, maybe the 30 minutes, I lose my smile faster than Shawn Michaels, and I'm just like, this feels like it's kind of dragging a bit. I feel like this isn't really going anywhere. There's a couple of jokes where I felt like were big fails. 2 of them I'm going to mention just to begin with. Was I felt like one of them was where he was kind of talking about bullies. Even though the reasoning behind the bully jokes made complete sense, I just felt like the punchlines and shit just kind of felt like it wasn't really there. But I did like the joke about like him, the Celebrity Apprentice team is basically running the world with like Trump's election and how he got elected. I thought that was actually pretty funny. Omarosa, obviously that's a little bit outdated, but nonetheless it was actually still pretty good. On top of that, you know, he pretty much talked about, you know, people obviously still being bullied, but like the Zuckerberg and shit, I feel like that just went on. And that was another problem I had, was that I felt like some of the jokes was actually pretty good, but some of them weren't that funny. Now, Chris Rock has always had that ability to kind of make even the lamest jokes, and I hate that word lame, but even the lamest jokes essentially a lot more elevated because of, you know, his smile, you know, his overly animated stuff. And his line delivery, which is a big thing on how most jokes are actually sold to begin with. But the problem was, I feel like some of the jokes weren't really that funny, and I felt like he kept on trying to push it and add on to it and whatnot, and it didn't even work, and it felt like it dragged a bit. Because I felt like he was just like, I work a lot on these fucking jokes. They're going to work. I don't care about dragging it up for like 5 more minutes. It's going to work, Some of the shit with like the white drills, I thought was kind of a big fail. It was kind of funny, but I feel like it just went on and on and on. Some celebrities in, the place. It's always nice to see celebrities for a 10-year, I guess hiatus. I only saw one celebrity, only Spike Lee. Spike Lee was laughing. I almost didn't spot him because he looked like a hermit crab, but nonetheless, I thought, Spike Lee looked like he was enjoying himself. I thought it could have had a little bit more audience reactions, maybe, show the people, or at least better reactions, because there was like a white girl on like the left side, I believe, that just seemed like she did not give 2 fucks about being here, which I just thought was kind of hysterical. There's a lot of comparisons that you kind of compare to, comedy and whatnot. The word tambourine, everybody wondering why he called it tambourine. It's basically kind of, he says, is about relationships where everybody has to be in a band, right? It's basically like being a band. Everybody's got to play their part. One person can't play something and then it's called the band. It's just kind of worthless, falters a bit. So I thought that was actually kind of good, and it's actually good relationship advice, especially for Valentine's Day, just to begin with. But I think also him talking about, coming and going was actually pretty good, because it's like a comedian, to me, personally. Is that you have to constantly keep on, amping up your comedy or doing comedy or staying relevant in the comedy scene, because if you're too far away from it, you're not going to really feel like you're into it anymore. Some people just need to stay away after being away for so long. Some people, have it, some people don't, some people keep it, whatever it may be. Sometimes people just want to have that, the legend status stay intact, like Eddie Murphy, basically. He's not even attempting comedy, I feel like. He said he was, but we've seen it. He's not going to do it. Nonetheless, but I thought that was actually a pretty good comparison. Just to begin with, I thought there was actually some awkward moments, like just right now, like I did. I thought there was some awkward moments where he was telling a joke, and it wasn't even a setup punchline, but people just like, he's telling a joke, and then you have about maybe 4 times where somebody was like, and then they stop, because they was like, oh shit, nobody else is fucking clapping with this thing. This is getting a little bit embarrassing. And it happened at least like 4 times into this video, or into the stand-up special, to the point where I was just like, what the fuck is going on here? Because this just seems so fucking dumb right now. But either way, I thought it was kind of, nonetheless. Now, a couple other things that I thought was actually quite funny, just to begin with. I also thought it was kind of funny where he's talking about religion and people kind of believing in God or whatnot, and mistakes. I thought that was actually one of the more funnier parts. He talks about divorce, fucking up, essentially. And I thought it was funny where he talked about pretty much the cops, right? Talking about, like, cops should be, paid more for what they do. And essentially, you get what you pay for, essentially. So I thought it was kind of funny because Netflix, like I said, you're paying $40 million. If these stand-up specials or whatever he does, his deal with Netflix is good or not, you paid the money. You got what you paid for. Whether you wanted to see the end result or not, that's on you. But cops being paid more, yeah, it's not really into my, viewpoint. It is what it is. My camera kind of shut off, but we're still going to kind of continue this review like I actually have some good fucking editing. So on top of that, as I was saying, other topics that he pretty much talks about is, porn stuff. Once you first get into porn, which I actually thought was pretty funny, but it seemed like the crowd didn't give 2 shits about it. But I thought once you get into porn, he was basically saying that, you'll set for anything, tits, whatever it may be, fat ass, and then you kind of get this weird fascination with certain shit, certain precise scenes to kind of get you off. I actually thought that was actually pretty legitly true, but it felt like the crowd didn't want to admit it or whatever, but they didn't really give 2 shits. But on top of that, I thought Chris Rock actually did a pretty solid job at actually delivering some good stuff. It did feel like he kind of was a bit of an old man talking about divorce and, approaching younger women. He even admits it himself, so that was actually good that he's not hiding away from it, even though he kind of dyed his hair, but it is what it is. Overall, this was actually a pretty solid stand-up special. It's not perfect. I don't know if it's worth $40 million. I don't know if anything's really worth $40 million for an hour of your time. But I guess that's really up to Netflix. Now, is it worth your time? I think it's actually a pretty solid thing, like I said. Other than that, you can just do that, because let's be real here. If you don't have a date for Valentine's Day, if you don't got nobody else for Valentine's Day, take Chris Rock's advice. Find that perfect porn clip, right? And I'll probably just spit it at the camera, but find that perfect porn clip and enjoy yourself on this hot Valentine's Day. Or you could actually just have the most blackest fucking week of your life with Black Panther, Black Lightning, this, and then, you can watch how Stella got a groove back or something, you know, or a blaxploitation thing. Either way, it is what it is. Comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith, and I'm signing out.